Okay friends, welcome back. In this video tutorial I will walk you through some of the most important steps and elements of your assignment number 4. Okay. Now, if you can recall, assignment number 4 is about a textbook bartering database. You can read the case description on page 51 of your textbook. So basically the case talks about a student who is inspired by the idea of protecting environment and social responsibility. So instead of people buying books and just throwing them away or spending money on books so that additional trees are cut to produce those textbooks or books, this student decides to create a textbook bartering database so that students can earn credit for bringing in their old textbooks, and then they can use that credit for actually purchasing textbooks for their courses as opposed to buying new ones. Okay, so that's the essence of the case, and you can read about some details on page 51, 52. Okay, now to support this idea you need to build a database. I will go assignment by assignment. Now in assignment 1 you need to create tables. In a way those tables are already given to you. I mean, all those tables and together with data contained in those tables are listed on pages 52 and 53. Now I've noticed that some people get a bit lost at the data entry stage. One of the mistakes that I see is that sometimes they forget to enter a particular field. For example, they leave, let's say, book ID, which is a very important field. It's used for identifying books. So they leave book ID field in the books table empty, and because of that they cannot connect this table using relationships when they build the actual database, right? So that's one mistake. Some people just forget to enter certain important data elements. Number 2 mistake is that they get confused, they get lost in data types. For example, what they would do, like in one table, book ID will be an auto increment type, data type. This is what I'm talking about. If you go to design view, so in one table it will be an auto number, not auto number. And then it will be like 1, 2, 3. Those are the kind of IDs we will use. Now, in another table where book ID is used as a foreign key, that will be, let's say, short text. So because of that, there will be some kind of error related to type mismatch between those two keys. So that's why, to make things simple, I uploaded those tables for you already for case 1, for assignment 1. So if you had problems like at the table level, at the data entry level, so everything is already there, okay? And overall, data entry can be a tedious task, and it's just human nature. We're not good in those tedious, repetitive tasks such as data entry. So it's easy to make mistakes there. So once again, for your convenience, I created all the tables and I uploaded them to Canvas. So you can already have tables, with data entered. And you can add some data if you want. You can add your own name or names of your friends or some books that you like into the books table. Okay. Look, once you have tables in, you really need to make sure that I'll just expand on that again. You need to make sure that primary keys are properly specified. So for example, when we go to the books table, right, this is the so-called data sheet view. What you need to do, you need to go to the design view, right, and here you need to make sure that all attributes of field names, they have proper data types. By the way, just like a side note, personally I don't like the naming convention that is given in your textbook, and I use a different naming convention. For example, first of all, I don't leave any spaces here, okay? I don't leave any spaces because that can be quite confusing, as one of those video tutorials explained to you when you write code, let's say using VBA, Visual Basic for Application, because you may get lost in variable names. So I never leave any spaces in field names. Also, the kind of naming convention I use is that for every attribute in a particular table, the first word that describes that attribute, the first word of the name of the attribute, is the name of the table. So instead of calling this attribute number of copies, I would call it something like books number copies. So books is the name of the table and it comes first. Now this makes it very easy to recognize attributes later on, because just by looking at this attribute you know what this attribute stores and you know which table or which entity it comes from. Okay. So in our case we have book ID. Now it's better to use short text as a data type because if you look at the book IDs, well, again, it's a long topic. It's explained to you in this video tutorial that I ask you to watch before attempting those assignments. Basically, it's much safer sometimes to use a short text, even if your attribute is actually a number. Okay, because you just have more control over what can be entered, using this kind of data type. I mean, if you try to use auto incremented, I mean, not for this particular field, but there are some other fields like student ID, right, where you need to use short text because it has both numbers and letters. So in many scenarios, it's better to use a short text for your primary key, even if it's a numeric variable in essence, because it gives you just like more freedom to create like custom codes and all those things. And that's exactly what they're doing here. They have some attributes, primary key attributes that have like a combination of characters. So in that case, it's better to have short text. So book title is a short text, number of copies is a number, credits is a number. Again, you need to make sure that there's a primary key for every entity. The way you specify it is by clicking like this and then selecting this attribute as a primary key. You need to press this button for that. Okay. Now the same thing with credits. If you open credits table and you go to design view, you have student ID, which is a short text, and that's your primary key. Again, this button is selected. The number of credits is a number. When you go to orders, again, go to the design view. Make sure that that you have date for the order, and this is a date-time data type. Now, orders is something that is called an associative entity. If you remember our lecture on the principles of database design, sometimes we need to have an associative entity to link two entities together. Okay. Now, this particular entity, orders, it links two entities together, books and students. Okay. Because if you look at the relationship between books and students entities, you will see that this is a many-to-many relationship, because one student can order many books, and one book can be ordered by many students. Let's say accounting textbook, particular accounting textbook can be ordered by many students. So it's a many-to-many relationship. That's why you need to have orders as an associative entity, linking those two entities together. Okay. Now this brings us a step back to this video lecture that we had about database design. So if you don't remember what I'm talking about, please go back and revisit that discussion about associative entities and resolving many-to-many relationships. It was like in the second half of that video presentation that has 4 or 5 parts. Okay. Now the reason that again, using some of the information from that tutorial about database design, the reason you know that this is an associative entity is that it has the so-called compound keys, right? Compound primary key means complex primary key. It means it's a primary key that consists of 2 parts, or not necessarily 2 parts. Can be more than 2 parts if it's an associative entity linking more than 2 entities together. In our case, orders is an associative entity linking books and students, 2 entities. So therefore, our compound primary key has 2 parts. The way you designate 2 primary keys as in one particular entity, you hold Control key, and then you select this one and this one by holding Control, and then you press this button. So once again, you hold Control, select this one, and then press this button. So that's how you designate 2 attributes to be like parts of one compound primary key. Okay. Now, again, speaking about ERD modeling in our previous lecture, before doing that, before specifying all those primary keys, probably it makes sense to create an ERD diagram first, to sketch out an ERD diagram. Okay. Here in this assignment, I'm not requiring you to do that directly, but you will do it indirectly, and I'll show you how later on. But in assignment 5, I do require you to draw an ERD diagram using Gliffy.com. Gliffy.com is that website that I showed you before that you can use for diagramming. So if you click Start Drawing, you need to go to UML class, and this is where you have entity relationships for creating an ERD diagram. So those are your entities, and once you have 2 entities, you can have you can start having specifying relationships among those entities. Now, I'll show you like what I was talking about using Gliffy diagramming software. I'm talking about this orders entity. So you see what happens. You have a student entity. It's called students, which is again a violation of our naming convention, where we said that you need to use singular nouns to name entities. So we have students and we have books, and this is orders. Okay. Now orders will have a compound primary key. That will have two parts, and we use dot notation to show that this primary key has two parts. It will have student's ID, student ID and book ID. So this is how we know that these two attributes, they form one compound primary key. Here we're going to have book ID is our primary key, and here we will have student ID is our primary key. And the relationships will be as the cardinality of those relationships will be as follows. One order is associated with exactly one student. However, one student can be associated with zero many orders. So we need something like this. So one student is associated with zero many orders, and one order is placed exactly by one student. Now, a book can be ordered many times. However, one order is for exactly one book. At least that's how the tables are set up. So it would be something like this. Okay, so those tables that I just showed you, they implement this type of relationship. So let's go back to our tables. So we have orders. Now here we have students. Again, please go to the design view to make sure that all the data types are correct. That student ID is your primary key and it's a short text. The credits table is fairly straightforward. Basically, you're keeping track of student credits in this table. So you have student ID and the number of credits associated with a particular student. In fact, I would argue that this table violates second normal form, because you can place number of credits into the student entity without losing anything. So it could be one of the attributes here. But again, we'll stick with whatever the case has, whatever the tables that are provided for case 1. Okay. So look, you need to make sure that all your tables are correct. So I'll go through them one more time. So we have books table, should look something like this. Again, go to the you have to go to the datasheet view to make sure that nothing is. Let me close it because I don't want to save. Maybe I made some changes accidentally. So once again, go through those tables. Look at the data view. Make sure there are no empty cells. Also, make sure you have all the data types and primary keys properly specified for books, for credits, for orders. So we have a compound primary key consisting of two parts, and then students. So make sure everything is correctly specified. But again, in a way, you don't have to worry about that because I already uploaded those tables for you. This is in case you want to go back to your previous tables and figure out what went wrong, what kind of corrections you need to do at the table/data level. Okay. Look, friends. Once you have your tables there, you need to specify relationships among those tables. In other words, you need to build an ERD diagram in Access. Now, it's not going to look exactly like this. I would say it's a simplified version of an ERD diagram, but the principles are the same, right? So what you need to do, you need to go to database tools and then relationships, and you need to show all of those tables because so I'm holding Shift and I'm selecting all of those tables because all of those tables are related. So I'll just reposition them a little bit to be consistent with this diagram that we have. So we have students, orders, and books, right? So we have student, orders, and books like this. And then credits are related to students, so we'll put this table right here, this entity right here. Now, linking those tables using the cardinality relationships that you already figure out in Access is fairly easy. Just drag and drop keys to link entities together. So I click on student ID and then I drop it to student table. So this is how an Excel immediately figures out from the content of tables that those two tables are related based on this key, right? And it's a one-to-one relationship, which is true because for every student, for one student, we'll have one entry here. Okay. Now, don't click. I mean, ideally, you want to enforce referential integrity, but sometimes it's a problem because I'm already giving you tables, and if there's something wrong in these tables that violates this referential integrity, let's say it's a one-to-one relationship. However, one student doesn't have any credit. This table is empty. It will give you an error. So don't enforce it for now, at least for the purposes of this assignment. And you press create, so you have this relationship right here. Again, you link students to orders by dragging and dropping this key. So immediately it figures out that this is a one-to-many relationship, which is correct, right? This is a one-to-many relationship because you have one on the max here, and then you have many on the maximum side here as well. So we press create. The same thing between books and orders. You just drag and drop books here. So again, it figures out that it's a one-to-many relationship, and you just press create. Okay, so here your data model is specified. Okay. Now, if you have everything specified, so I'll just save it, and I'll close those relationships. If you have everything specified, then creating a form. I'm talking about assignment 2, part 2A. Then creating a form is a no-brainer because Access will figure out, once you specify which table you want to build your form upon, it will immediately figure out the forms, the subtables that it will be linked to. So in other words, it will figure out what the subform is. So what you need to do, because you need to create a form that allows you to browse through books in the inventory, and for every book you should be able to see the orders, and this is your subform, right? Just like a few words about a form. Now, a form is like a visual, user-friendly way of entering and viewing data. So you don't want users to be messing, end users of your database to be messing directly with tables, because who knows what they will do? Maybe they'll get lost in your data. Maybe they will change some primary key value, something that will generate errors. So you want to limit that. So to limit that, you want to make sure that they access data through forms, right? It makes it easier, more convenient, and also protects your database from some of the typos that a particular user may do, right? So this is what forms are all about. So for assignment 2A, you need to create a form that allows people to browse through books to see what kind of books they have in stock, and also to see what is the order history for that particular book. Again, doing it's very easy. You go to books, create, and then you just select form right here. So book, you click on this table books, right? I'll close it because sometimes it gives you an error if the table is open. Then you go to create, and then you click here. So you see immediately the form is generated. That's exactly what you need for 2A. If you wanna make the form look a bit nicer, you can go to design view, and this is where you can adjust like all those layouts, but don't change any data parameters here because those elements that are drawing on specific tables. Okay, so creating form is easy. So we're done with 2A. Okay, assignment 2B. Now we're getting into queries, and I'll close this. I don't want to save it. Now we're getting into queries. So just again, before we begin, a few words about queries. So what are queries? Now, as you can tell from the name itself, a query means a question. So a query is some kind of question that a user can formulate to a database. I don't want to get too philosophical about those philosophical and theoretical distinctions between the definitions of data and information. But basically, what you have in your database typically, what you have in your tables, you have raw material. And this raw material, most of the time, is not very useful to end users, let's say managers. In order to make something useful out of that raw material that you have in your tables, I'm talking about data, you need to produce information. And information is produced by aggregating or summarizing or somehow retrieving data and putting it into a form that is usable for end users, let's say managers, right? So that's where queries are very useful. Queries is a way, to talk to a database. Okay. I'll show you a bit later that there is a standardized query language. It's called SQL or SQL, and it stands for Structured Query Language. Okay. So you can formulate all those queries using this language, and SQL language is a big subject on its own. Because it's not only about syntax of the language, how to formulate those questions. It's also about logic of things. You know, you have to be somewhat familiar with the set theory, Boolean algebra, to really understand all the operations that can be possibly performed with the help of SQL language. Now, when it comes to Access, you can write queries, you can formulate queries using SQL language. However, you know, as it is the case with many other Microsoft products, there is a point-and-click visual interface that allows you to create queries without even knowing SQL language. You just need to understand the tables that you have, the kind of attributes that are in those tables, and the overall logic behind this visual way of creating queries. Okay. So that's a short introduction as to what queries are. You know, queries are specific ways that you can ask a particular question to a database, something that is of interest to you. Okay, so after covering this, let's talk about creating a select query, which is part 2b. Okay, to create a query, you need to go to Create, and then Query Design. So this is how you create a query, and then immediately it kind of asks you what kind of tables you want to see. Now, in our case, we only want to select information from the books. You know, I'm talking about assignment 2b, creating a select query, right? In our case, you only want to select information from the books table. Okay, so that's why you will select only books. For some other queries, you may need additional tables to be present. Okay, but you know, if you don't want to get lost, you can select all of them and then just figure out which tables you'll be actually working in reality. Okay, so I'm showing you how to create query, and then here you need to specify certain parameters: which field you're going to use, from which table, whether you want to have output sorted, and whether you want the output to be like sorted, let's say ascending or descending, and whether you want to show it, because sometimes you want to sort by a particular field, let's say, or group by a particular field, but you don't want to show it, right? So if you click here, it means you want to show it. Criteria, you can specify some kind of criteria, let's say greater than 50, and that's what assignment 2b asks you to do. You need to specify that it has to be greater than 50, right? Make sure select query means you want to select something, just retrieve something from a database. Now, in this particular assignment, we also have like append and update, I believe, query. So you need to make sure that the correct type is specified, and you also want to make sure if you want to calculate totals, that totals is pressed. Okay. So I'll let you figure out some of those details on your own, but I'll just show you how this query will look like. So basically, you know, I select this query, and I showed you how to create query by going here. And if you go to the design view, it will look like this, right? You want to select, you know, you have this books table displayed. You want to select book ID attribute from the table books, and you want to show it. You want to select book title from the books table, and you want to show it. You want to select number of copies from the books table, and you have a criteria that says greater than 50. You only want to select books that have more than 50 books in stock, right? So this is how this query will look like. If you run it by pressing here, you get exactly what you see in your case. Okay. And then just to show you, like while we're in this query, we can also go to the SQL view. So this is the SQL language. Microsoft Access is generating the SQL language statement that allows you to do this retrieval that you did by just visually clicking on the appropriate tables, attributes, and conditions. But of course, it's much better when you know SQL language, because sometimes you can go to the code and just figure out what exactly is happening with your query. But again, SQL language is a vast topic. You know, I'm afraid we don't have time to cover it in this class. But if you ever have a chance, or if you see yourself, becoming a professional database developer, then definitely you need to invest some time into learning SQL language. Okay, so that's greater than 50 query. Okay, assignment. So we're done with assignment 2b. Assignment 2c, creating a parameter query. So basically, you want to make sure that this query prompts a user to enter a specific book title, I believe, right? Or book code, book ID. And then it shows information about book ID, book title, and number of copies for that specific book. Sorry, it's not book ID, it's book title. Principles of accounting, for example, right? So basically, this is like a dialogue-like query where the query will ask a user first what kind of book title he or she is interested in, and based on what the user enters, it will generate an output, right? So, so this query is here. What book? So you see it asks you to enter title. Let's enter Principles of Accounting. and then it's 1. Okay. And here we have information about this specific book, Principles of Accounting 1. Book ID, book title, number of copies, and credits. You know, the number of credits that you need to buy this particular book. Okay. Again, you can right click and then you can see the design view. So basically here you're working, you know, as you can see, with one table again. You have books table for all of those attributes. So you're specifying that you want to have books ID shown, and you click here to make it visible. You specify that you want book title to be shown, and you click here to make it visible. You specify that you want number of copies to be shown, you know, and you click it to make it visible. And the same for credits. Now here you enter parameter, enter title. So you're saying for book title, I want user to provide the title that he or she is looking for. And the way you do it, you just enter something in this in square brackets. Like, you know, to make it more clear, I'll just put enter the book you are looking for, something like that. Okay. So that means, that tells Access that you want to have the value for this field, so that only records that match this value are retrieved. Okay. So if you run this query, it says enter the book you're looking for. So it doesn't, you know, here it's just like a message for the user. Access knows that you're looking for a book title because you enter this criteria here. So we'll enter Principles of Accounting 1 again. So here we go. Okay. So this is a parameter query. The reason it's called parameter because it needs an input, a parameter, to be entered by the user. Okay. Again, when you look at this table, this query, I'm sorry, make sure you have select, you know, button, and by default it's being selected, but this is a select query, so you need to have select on. Okay. So I'll close it without saving anything. Okay, creating an update query. By the way, just like to stop a little bit, you know, in order for all of those queries to work properly, especially queries that, you know, queries that, or reports, queries, or forms that, you know, make use of several tables at the same time. I mean, you want to make sure that your ERD model is correct. So this is our ERD model, because otherwise the things will not work. But I think in this case we don't have any queries that actually go beyond one table. So, or maybe, yeah, we do, I think, the last one. So anyways, you know, if you have a query that involves more than one book, then cardinality has to be correctly specified. Otherwise, Access will not know how to work properly with tables, you know, because it will not know what is the relationship between those tables. Okay, so let's go to assignment 2D, creating an update query. So this is the query. I'll open it in design view. And you'll see that, yeah, this is what I was talking about. This query is using several tables. No, actually, just updates. Oh, yeah, credits. Yeah, I think it uses several tables. So we have number of credits, and then we have credit. Yeah, so basically, if a student buys something, then number of credits is reduced because he bought a particular book. So for the credits that are allocated for a particular book, there is a reduction. In the student's own account, right? So that's what I was talking about. If you don't have relationships properly specified, it's not going to work. Okay. So, but again, the update query looks simple. The only thing that you need to keep in mind, you need to select that this is an update query, so that Access recognizes that this is an update command. Because if you don't select it, you don't have any update to option, right? So basically, what you're saying, I'm working with those tables, okay, and you know, you want to make sure that the system looks at the orders, okay, and based on that deducts the number of credits, credits that has to be subtracted from a student account, right? Yeah, so this is like credits. It's not a student account, it's a separate account, although it can be a part of a student entity, right? So basically what you're saying, you want to reduce the number of credits that a student has by the number of credits that he or she spent on books as indicated in the orders database, right? But the orders database retrieves information from the book to figure out how much credits to deduct for a particular book, right? So that's what I'm saying. All those things need to be properly specified, okay? But it looks simple. The implementation looks simple. You're basically saying deduct the number of credits that a student has by the number of credits that he or she spent on books. and that's figured out from two. The system figures out the number of credits to deduct from two tables. First of all, it looks at the orders table to see what kind of books a student has ordered, and then it seeks related information to the books entity to see the credits that needs to be deducted. Actually, I haven't followed deeply the logic of this. There may be a mistake here because I don't, I'm not sure whether Excel will really figure out all orders for a student in this particular case. But it doesn't matter, because all we're trying to do is just trying to create an example of an update query, right? So at this particular stage, it's a preliminary case. It doesn't matter, okay? So if you press run, you'll see that there's a prompt asking you, do you really want to update 18 rows? Because I think this is the number of students that you have, and this is the number of entries that you have in the credits table. If you press yes, then all the updates will be done. So if you go back to the credits, you will see, one student has a negative credit, meaning he or she spent more than he has. Okay, so this is your update query. Okay, now let's go to assignment 2E, creating a totals query. Now this is a books ordered table. So if you go to design view, you'll see that this query makes use of two tables, books and orders, right? So basically, you want to count, you want to generate a report so that you have book titles, and you need to specify that it's grouped by book title, because this is your unit of analysis. So you want to have groups in relation to every title that you have, and for every title that you have in the second table, which is orders, you count. So the total says count. You count the number of times a particular book has been ordered, and you sort it in descending order, right? From most popular book, most frequently ordered book, to least frequently ordered book, and both parameters need to be shown. Again, make sure that this is a select query and that totals is pressed, because otherwise there will be no option for selecting those totals if you don't have this on. So this is how this query will look like. If you run it, yeah, you see the summary from most frequently ordered books to the least frequently ordered books. Okay. All right, generating a report. So you need to generate a report on a query that summarizes student orders and credits. So basically, you want to see information about students, the number of credits that they have, and the kind of orders they have placed for what kind of books. So what is a report? Now, a report, I think the name is kind of self-explanatory. It's some kind of static snapshot of a database. So if a user has a particular question about data, then you can answer that question by giving him or her a report. Okay, so a report is like some kind of snapshot or summary of data using particular conditions. There are many ways to create reports. There's that manual way where you can specify everything, but I'll show you just like a simple way, which is using a report wizard, right? Now, the report will be on books, on students and the kind of books that they have ordered. So you go to create, and then you select report wizard. Now, I pressed on student so that by default it recognizes that I want to start with student, but you don't have to do it. You can just say, go to report wizard and start doing that. So basically, when you start report wizard, you're saying, first of all, I want to have data from table students. And just like it is in that report, you want to have student ID, student first name. No, 1 second. You don't want to have, because in the book it starts with, so I'll put it back. It starts with last name and first name. So we'll do it in the same order. We'll select last name first, then first name. Then you want to show that you want to retrieve number of credits for each student. So you go to table credits and you add this number of credits for each student. And then you want to see information about orders, right? So you go to orders, and you add what is that, book title? No, you need to, for book title, you need to go to books. So you have book title, and then you have credits, right? So those are the fields that you want to be displayed. Again, because you have relationships specified, the system will know how to retrieve appropriate data for those things, right? so you press next, and then you want to specify that it's sorted by student, right? So you're saying I want it to be sorted by student, more specifically last name. One second, I'll go back. Yeah, you want to make sure it's sorted by student like this. Yeah, and you'll keep it like this because it already specifies that we're going to have this kind of format that you see in the report. You have last name, first name, number of credits, book title, and credits. So you press next. And then you press next again. And then you have landscape format just to make it look nicer, and you have step view. Right, so does it look right? Yeah, we have 2 books here and so forth. Now, once you have this report, you can close this print view and you can go to the so-called design view, for example, to adjust like all those fields and enter custom headings. For example, here we have order report. Okay. Now, there is one thing that is missing. You have missing totals, right? Because you need to have total of credits for each student. Now, this is where the groups, and this is something that will be useful in your second assignment as well. This is where the groups come in. Okay. You can read more about it, like how Access generates reports. But basically, for Access, you're basically specifying groups to generate any kind of report, and that's what we did. Like in this wizard, we basically said that the groups, the unit of output that we want to have is student, and we want everything to be sorted by last name. You can have subgroups. You can say, well, once you have student subgroup, you can also sort by another table or another, and then, so it's like a nested groups, one group within another group within another group. So when Access generates reports, it kind of cascades through those groups. First of all, you retrieve information for student, but here it's like a one group report. So we're saying retrieve information about students and then just provide details from another table about books ordered, right? So in a way, it's a 2-group report, but we implemented using that details format. Okay, so you need to press here to see information about those groups. So basically here we have only one group, and you can add groups if you want to. You can experiment with that and see what happens. You go to more, and then it says with no totals, but you do want to have totals. And total is on credits, this particular field, right? One sec, yeah. Sorry, I'll go back here. So you select the totals is on credits, and you want to show it in the group footer, because right now it's not a. So you have it here, right? For each student, there is a footer for this student ID group. Okay, so that's what it is. And then if you view this report, it will look exactly like what you see in your textbook, right? So we have totals for every student. Again, go back if you want to add some. You want to experiment with the layout. You want to add some additional labels. You want to edit those labels. Go back to the design view and do those readjustments and edits here, and then don't forget to save it. Okay. All right, friends. So this concludes my video presentation on assignment 4. Somebody asked me about this. You only need to submit the database. You don't need to submit the description file. Okay. The final thing I would like to say is that if you really want to read, if you like some of those tasks, they require doing some kind of background readings. I mean, you cannot just jump to report. I mean, obviously, right? You cannot just jump to creating reports unless you know a little bit about reports, right? Now, nowadays, as Mr. Wickham. Now, Mr. Wickham is like one of my heroes, I guess. He's one of the chief creators of R language, which is a statistical programming language, and now he's a chief scientist at RStudio, which is the company that produces this visual environment for visual development environment for the R language. And I ask you to read his, if you remember, I asked you to read his paper earlier in this course, right? So this paper on tidy data. So according to Wickham, nowadays if you want to learn something, you only need to have 2 things. Number 1, you need to have motivation to learn something, and number 2, you need to have Google, because everything can be retrieved online. Information about queries, about even if you go to YouTube, you'll see a lot of tutorials about specifically creating reports or queries and so forth. There's one source I would like to recommend to you. I'll just leave this page. You know, if you really wanna have like a good reference source on Access, I recommend this book. It's called Access 2013 Bible. Now, the good thing about this book, it's not that expensive. I wouldn't say it's cheap. It's kind of a little bit pricey, I guess, but not as expensive as some of the other kind of Bibles or big handbooks that I've seen, right? Because typically, you know, in my experience, those run close to $100. Another good thing about this book is that you can have a Kindle version, and you don't have to have any Kindle reader or iPad or iPhone, because Kindle you can read Kindle books on a desktop computer. In fact, in your case, it's better because you are working on your Access database, and if you want to look something up, you just open this book on your desktop computer or laptop computer, and you look something in it. So if you want to have like in-depth reference source that pretty much covers anything there is to know about Access, I recommend this book. But again, it's not necessary because you can easily look up information on the web, on YouTube, how to do those specific things. Okay. And also a word of encouragement: don't worry if things don't go well. I've been there myself. Like, I've been learning some relatively complicated applications without any help. By doing it independently, there was nobody to guide me, and I did feel that I spent a lot of time just trying something over and over again, and it didn't work, and it was very frustrating. But also, I felt that this was the time when I learned the most, because learning requires like rewiring your brain circuitry a little bit, like all those neurons, right? So by doing those things over and over and trying those things, you really rewire your brain, and basically you make those things stick for life, in your brain, how to do certain things in Access, right? So don't feel bad about it. So as I said, I will extend the deadlines for both the assignments. So if you felt like you need more time to really, to really master Access for assignment 4, then this is your chance to resubmit it. I will extend both of the deadlines. And if you have any questions, post your questions here. Microsoft Access questions. I apologize, I missed some of your questions. I'm usually very disciplined about looking at Canvas reports to see whether there are any comments, but somehow I just missed some of the latest questions that some of you had. But hopefully this tutorial answered most of them. If not, then feel free to submit your question here again. And I'll be checking, this discussion thread over the weekend, so feel free to post those questions. Most likely I will respond within the same day. Okay, so this is the end of my video tutorial. Thanks for watching. The tutorial for assignment 5 will be posted shortly as well.